What's up, addicts? Finally got my quarantine hair cut, and we are here giving you guys yet another round of Dynasty trade updates, going through the NFC North today, and let's get right into it. So off the bat, just reviewing everything that happened in terms of free agency and the draft, I feel like the NFC North is the division that probably downgraded in terms of talent the most. And that's pretty much across the board. So we'll begin with looking at the Chicago Bears now. They add Nick Foles, give the whole quarterback controversy between him and Mitch Trubisky. They add Ted Ginn, they add Jimmy Graham for some reason, and they did add Robert Quinn, good addition for their defense, but they lost a lot of guys on defense. Taylor Gabriel gone, Trey Burton gone, also lost Kyle Long, long-term guard. Nick Williams, Leonard Floyd, Kevin Pierre-Louis, Prince Amukamara, and HaHa Clinton-Dix all gone in free agencies. Quite a few holes on the defense. And then in the draft, first overall pick, they take Cole Kmet, tight end out of Notre Dame. This is now their 10th tight end on the roster. They did grab Jalen Johnson in the second round as well, and the rest of their picks were round 5 or later, so in terms of immediate impact, we don't typically expect guys to make an impact in round 5. So this team has a lot of holes that they haven't really addressed, and they take a tight end with their first pick. Very interesting move there. So in terms of dynasty trade value, which is what we're really getting at here, Mitch Trubisky, I guess you could say his trade value is pretty much almost non-existent at this point. He'll probably find a way to be a backup on another team, but this really looks to be the likes of him not really seeing the ability to succeed as a starter. I doubt any other team tries to give him a starter role. If you're bringing in Nick Foles, who was replaced by a guy like Gardner Minshew with the Jaguars, and it's really looking like they're going to give Foles this job, I guess it's still not a certainty, so it's not like you're just going to drop Mitch Trubisky in a super flex league. But if you don't have Nick Foles, you can't count on Mitch Trubisky to be starting the season. With Nick Foles, you can say his value goes up slightly, although I don't know how long this tenure in Chicago will last. Most likely they'll be addressing the quarterback position again very soon. Now, for the rest of the guys on this team, David Montgomery, his value is still pretty low, just considering how horrible he looked last year, but he's probably someone that you could buy low at this point, especially if the owner that has him is disappointed with what he saw last year. He's going to get a lot of carries, get a lot of touches, so even if he is as inefficient as he was last year, that still could lead to a decent amount of fantasy points just based on volume alone. And then Tariq Cohen, it seems like, is one of the most forgotten players. You never see him brought up in trade ideas, you never see him brought up in polls. It's like one of the most undersung players in all fantasy, but in PPR leagues, he still actually holds a lot of value. There's a world where Tariq Cohen actually outperforms David Montgomery in PPR this season, so probably someone that if you have, you're not really going to trade, and if you don't have him, get him as a throw-in on another deal that you're doing is a smart idea. Now, Allen Robinson is definitely the most valuable player on this team, is criminally undervalued across fantasy ranking systems. Should honestly be contending to be a top 10 wide receiver. He finished as a wide receiver 1 last year with the horrible play of Mitchell Trubisky. Assuming Nick Foles plays, this will be the best quarterback. I know, the best quarterback that Allen Robinson has ever played in his career. So this could be a fantastic year for him. He's going into his age apex year. So looking for a lot of really good things from Allen Robinson this year. And then Anthony Miller is also undervalued. Don't see him talked about a lot. But they let Taylor Gabriel go. And pretty much outside of Robinson, it's just Miller in terms of talented guys in the wide receiver core there. So it's really Robinson and Miller. I like both of these guys. Going to be values in season-long leagues as well. And I guess Cole Kmet would be the only tight end worth rostering in my opinion, but even him, the turnaround time for him to actually produce value, you can probably find a better use of that roster spot. All right, let's jump over to the Detroit Lions. Now, the Lions didn't have as much movement in the free agency as the Bears did. They did grab Vitae from I believe the Seahawks had him last. Jamie Collins, linebacker from the Patriots, and Desmond Trufant, cornerback. So a couple upgrades there. They did lose Graham Glasgow, Ashawn Robinson on the defensive line, Devon Kennard, linebacker, Darius Slay, and Rashad Melvin. So a couple hits to their defensive backfield as well. They immediately addressed that in the draft with Jeff Okudah. And then they give a curious pick in the second round of grabbing DeAndre Swift. They also grabbed Julian Akawara, edge rusher there, and then Jonah Jackson, a guard, and Logan Sternberg, a guard, I think both in the 4th round. And then I just want to throw his name out there just because it's kind of interesting. Quentin Cephas gets drafted, I believe, in the 5th round. Not a highly rated prospect, pretty much across the Dynasty fantasy landscape, but right now he's the only wide receiver that's on contract with the Lions through 2021. So every other wide receiver on this team is pretty much done after this season is over. So for what it's worth, I'm sure they'll give an extension to Kenny Golladay. That would be my assumption, but for what it's worth, Quintez Cephas is the only guy in their long-term plans as of right now. Overall, I still really like Matthew Stafford's value based on his injury last year. There might be a little bit of a devaluing to him if you can acquire him cheap, especially in Superflex leagues with all the rookie hype right now. Sometimes you can get him thrown into a deal before if you haven't done your rookie draft yet. I still really like Stafford. He would have finished as a quarterback 1 last year, and this team is going to continue to need to rely on him. DeAndre Swift coming here was a pretty bad landing spot in my opinion. It's not the best offensive line. This isn't a team that likes to run with anything more than like a 50-50 committee. I really think that's what this is going to turn into with Swift and Kerryon there, because it's not like Kerryon has been bad. He just can't stay healthy. So if he gets hurt, then of course DeAndre Swift's value probably goes up a little bit, but it's most likely going to be a pretty heavy split between Swift and Kerryon. And for a team that doesn't check the ball down to the running back more, I don't remember the exact numbers, but they're not in the upper echelon of teams that throw to the running back. Statistically, we haven't really seen that much from Matt Stafford since the Reggie Bush days. Now, it doesn't mean that his value is down completely. It's just going from before the draft, he was about our running back 2, and he dropped all the way down to a running back 4 in terms of rookie value. Kerryon Johnson sees a much steeper decline because obviously he's going from a backfield where he was pretty much the main talent to now he's playing second fiddle there along with the new blood with DeAndre Swift. Kenny Golladay seems to be another one of those forgotten guys. He is only 2 months younger than Allen Robinson, so seeing him heavily above Allen Robinson in a lot of rankings is a little curious, but I do still really like Kenny Golladay, most likely going to get an extension at some point this year. Marvin Jones is another guy that a lot of people forget about. If you're in a win now dynasty mode, what you really want to do is try to see if you can acquire Marvin Jones for cheap, because he's going to give you wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 value. You can probably, I've seen people acquire him for something like as little as like a 3rd or a 4th round pick. So throw that out there and try to see if the Marvin Jones owner, especially if they're in a rebuild, they'll be looking to get anything they can for him, because this is probably the last year that he's really going to be useful. As we mentioned, Quintez Cephas, only wide receiver on contract past this year. Probably someone I would just stash on my bench, not someone you're going to be looking to start this year. And then TJ Hawkinson, obviously rookie tight ends typically take a few years before they are actually fantasy relevant, but he did show a little bit of spark last year. So obviously if you have him, you're hanging on to him. Worth trying to buy low if the owner that has him is willing to let him go. Okay, looking over at the Green Bay Packers, barely do anything in free agency. They add Devin Funchess, who maybe he'll end up being able to resurge back to the way he looked a few years ago in Carolina, but that's unlikely. And then Christian Kirksey from Cleveland, they grab him to replace Blake Martinez, who left. Brian Bulaga is out, Jimmy Graham, sayonara, and Kyler Fackrell out. So a couple of key pieces there. Brian Bulaga especially, losing a really solid tackle was always going to impact your offensive line. They feel that their depth is good enough to survive that because they go to the draft and they take Jordan Love in the 1st round, a quarterback that most likely won't see the field for at least 3 years. When you look at Aaron Rodgers' dead cap hit for this team, they really aren't going to be able to get out from under that contract at a minimum of 2 years, but probably 3 years. So they're basically wasting his entire rookie deal, which we'll get into that in another video. But as most of you already know, rookie quarterback contracts give you a significant advantage. So they're basically squandering that. 2nd round, they take A.J. Dillon, wannabe Derrick Henry type running back when they already have Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. And then they take an H-back and Josiah DeGuara in the 3rd round. I don't want to talk about this draft anymore. Aaron Rodgers definitely sees his value go down a bit. He's already getting up there in age, and now that they've drafted his replacement, his time is definitely ticking. Jordan Love going here probably will be an okay acquisition, assuming he gets the chance to start, but I don't even believe him in that much as a prospect, so I'm not trying to acquire him in any league, really. Aaron Jones sees his value go down. This is just another sign that the team refuses to commit to him as a lead back. That's been the case all the way back to Mike McCarthy when they were splitting carries with Jamal Williams. Last year, Aaron Jones had a great year, and they were still trying to force feed carries to Jamal Williams. So now with a second round capital in A.J. Dillon, you know they're going to do the same thing there. So A.J. Dillon sees his value go up to a team that's going to want to use him right away. Jamal Williams is probably a guy you can drop at this point. I think A.J. Dillon will completely supplant him, and this is his last year anyway, so he's likely out. Devontae Adams sees his value go up even more, which is pretty crazy when you consider where he already was. I do think this is where you get to the interesting situation in Dynasty leagues where you have a wide receiver that's 27, is already past his age apex, getting into that point in his career where you typically project like a downward trend. However, for Devontae Adams, haven't finished any projections for the upcoming season yet, but most likely, just on paper, he's either going to be my wide receiver 1 or 2 right next to Michael Thomas. So this is a great guy if you're in win now. If you're looking to rebuild, someone I'd probably try to sell on, if not this year, at least some point this year or at the end of the season, because his value is most likely not going to be much higher than it is right now. Allen Lazard, I guess, also sees a little bit of an increase in value, but doesn't really mean it's someone that you should go out and try to acquire. Just someone, if you have it on your bench, probably just wait and see if he can take a step forward. Same thing for Devin Funchess. It's probably a guy that you can get off your waiver wire right now. If you have a spot, it's probably worth stashing, because assuming this passing game is a little more efficient this year in terms of touchdowns and they're not running the ball as much with Aaron Jones in the red zone, someone's going to need to step up outside of Devontae Adams. Could be Jay Sternberger, who I think his value actually goes up with the Josiah DeGuara pick there, since he's more of a fullback anyway. I think Jay Sternberger, we didn't get to see him at all last year, and this team does think that he can be a predominant threat in the passing game, which they need weapons badly. If Jay Sternberger is healthy, he could take a massive step forward this year. So someone you want to try to acquire in a trade now before his value goes up. All right, and then let's look at the last team here, the Minnesota Vikings. They add Michael Pierce, defensive tackle there, and they lose quite a few pieces. Now, some of these guys obviously had already hit a pretty steep decline, but still, it's going to be weird seeing these names on different teams. So Stephon Diggs gone. Everson Griffin still hasn't even signed anywhere, but he's gone. Stephon Weatherly, Mackenzie Alexander, Xavier Rhodes, Trey Waynes, Jerrion Kearse, and Andrew Sendejo are all gone. So quite a few big names on the defensive side of the ball, but at least in the draft, the Vikings looked to retool all the areas that they had become weaker in because of free agency. They add Justin Jefferson out of LSU. Great pickup there. Is going to be a great possession receiver to pick up where Stephon Diggs left off. They get Jeff Gladney, cornerback, to replace Xavier Rhodes and Trey Waynes. Ezra Cleveland falls all the way to them in the third round. He had been profiled as a first-round pick from a lot of mock drafters, so get a nice addition to their offensive line, which had already been kind of weak, so that should help them a lot. Get another cornerback in Cameron Dantzler, and then grab a few more defensive guys for the rest of the draft. So they did a good job of going after and trying to fix the holes that free agency had caused for them. I'm not sure that their defense will be as strong. Obviously, rookies, you can only hope that they hit in their first year. But Justin Jefferson is an amazing pickup for them. I think that definitely brings the value of Kirk Cousins up a little bit. Not that this is going to be a pass-first team by any means, but Gary Kubiak, as the offensive coordinator there, does typically find a way to get fantasy production out of his wide receiver 1, which should most likely be Adam Thielen. I think Adam Thielen will be a top 24. It could actually broach the wide receiver 1 numbers this year. Probably not someone, again, this is another one of those, not a guy that you want to build around in Dynasty because he's a bit older, but if you're in win now, it's a perfect name. Adam Thielen, Marvin Jones, guys like that you can get. Typically, T.Y. Hilton is another name. get pretty cheap in trades right now if you're in win now and you just need one more wide receiver to help boost your starting lineup. That's a great target to go after. You can get for pretty cheap and will really help give your roster that extra oomph it needs to get to the championship. Justin Jefferson definitely saw a meteoric rise in his value going here. He's going to be used right away. He's going to be, in my opinion, he's going to compete with Jalen Reagor and Denzel Mims for the best rookie receiver in redraft leagues. We do think CeeDee Lamb is our best rookie receiver in Dynasty overall, but we don't see his production becoming as immediate just based on the strength of that offense in Dallas. We'll get to that when we get to Dallas. Tajay Smith is someone that you probably just leave on the waiver wire. I would buy low on Irv Smith if you can. Obviously, he's going to supplant Kyle Rudolph here pretty soon. Kyle Rudolph is a guy that you probably don't ever really want to start, but you really don't want to drop either because he at least gives you the opportunity for a red zone touchdown. Once Kyle Rudolph is gone, it's wheels up for Irv Smith. Really like his prospect, and give him a few more years, he'll be a pretty dominant tight end. So if you can buy him low now, that's probably a good idea. But anyway, if you guys are curious how we have all these guys ranked, trying to make some trades, we have Dynasty rankings on our website for free. Check out that link in the description, or go to fantasyaddictionnetwork.com. Hit that like and subscribe button for more content like this and more strategy videos as we get closer to the season. We'll see you guys in the next video.